Last night we caught a skunk in this trap, and when I tipped it up to take care of the skunk, I walked away for a moment and the skunk climbed the trap and walked out of the top. In other words, he pushed this drop down piece. This drops down on both ends. Pushed the drop down piece out, walked right up and out of there and jumped to the ground and ran off. So I installed this cover metal so the skunk can't see me. There was already one on the other side, but we had to be really careful last night. And so I had taken this side off so we could see what we were catching in the trap, because we wanted to make sure we were catching the rock chuck. And then we would take the rock chuck out to the desert. But if I'm catching skunks, I don't want to be seen. And after the drop down goes down, you can see their little stripe on their nose, little black stripe on their nose. And you can feel by the weight if it's a smaller skunk. But we'll see if we can catch a skunk. So we've taken some old juicy blackberries and set in there. And see if I can see the blackberries on the trip. I also set a good egg. I set some eggshells on both sides and created a path in and out, just fairly clean so they're not blocked by the view. Set some stuff alongside here to distract them from coming around too far before they turn back in and go in the trap. The fence over there is about 3 feet from the trap. And if I don't catch anything for a couple of days, I might move it right in line with the fence, because they like to probably follow a fence line. We'll see. They'll be able to smell the juicy blackberries. Where we had the trap set was over here where we saw the rock chuck come through between the shop and the blackberries back in there. Right here is where the trap was. So we pulled that out. They might be discouraged from going right there for a few days. I set it out back by the chicken coop. I also set a smaller trap back here by the fence where the squirrels come through, to see if we get some skunk traffic this direction. This little guy right here, and you can see under the fence there's a pretty good opening, and a rock chuck, a skunk, and a squirrel can all get through that opening. And that's plenty big enough for a skunk. So we may catch it on this side too. You see the street is on down the fence line. Beyond that house right there, there's probably 300 feet, and then there's a ravine. And then there's another yard and a home over on another street on the other side, so both of those areas come down to a ravine, and there's a lot of wildlife in there. But I don't know if that's where the skunks are staying, or if they're actually staying in our backyard or the neighbor's backyard, because we both have some pretty luscious backyards. Just yesterday, you can see the little trap I set from this side, and it's 300 feet to the far fence of our property back there. Yesterday I was picking some goat head weeds with a friend about 3 miles from here, and he has 5 or 6 rows of corn that are probably 80 feet to 100 feet long, and I saw some deer droppings, and he says, yeah, there's a 4-point buck that's living in my corn here in town. So it's kind of fun to see the wildlife, but they can wreak havoc. We don't like waking up at night with a skunk smell. It's just impossible to sleep. So we're going to get rid of those things. We've also been fighting squash bugs. This plant here is dying. I've killed a number of adults and a lot of little babies and pulled up the eggs. This is the second go around. Today's the 11th of August. You can see where a colony of squash bugs was starting in on our spaghetti squash right here. That's what happens. They start and then that circle spreads. So we took up a ton of hatched squash bugs, stink bugs, and killed 2 or 3 adults in here, but I didn't see very many adults. And I still don't see very many today. There's not a lot of activity right there. And we'll monitor it and make sure this circle of death does not continue in our squash. We just have to keep fighting them. Make sure we don't use any spray on the squash we eat.